Hello and welcome to Projector, and on this episode, the name's Ape. C.I.Ape. Sam, voiced by Anthony Scott Gould, is a highly trained talking chimpanzee that is sent on covert missions for Jungle Command, assisted by his handler Bondi, played by Sophia Alongi, who takes care of him. When the world is potentially threatened by budding supervillain Alpha Dog, played by Skip Schwink, who plans to take it over using robot dogs created by mad scientist Dr. Devious, played by Lucas Ross, Sam is sent undercover to infiltrate Alpha Dog's secret base on Wolfhound Island and thwart the Devious scheme. C.I.Ape is made by Ace Entertainment Group. If the name sounds a little bit familiar, then chances are you have probably heard of at least one of their movies. They had a big hit last year, relatively speaking, with 2020's undisputed so bad it's good movie Money Plane, which tried to be a big silly Hollywood blockbuster on an absolutely tiny budget, and the result was more unintentionally hilarious than knowingly so. But Ace Entertainment makes a lot more than that kind of movie. In fact, a lot of its bread and butter seems to be making family films, and they all follow a fairly standard template. So you got a kid paired up with a CGI creation, be it an animal or some sort of fantasy creature. A good example of this is a movie that I saw they released earlier this year called Joey and Ella, about a kid named Ella that's paired up with a young Joey. And you would think that's fairly straightforward, except that the Joey intercepts a magical meteorite that allows it to talk and grow to the size of a full kangaroo. Yeah, that movie is absolutely bonkers, just absolutely bewildering, and Ace Entertainment makes several of these kinds of movies a year. In fact, there's one that I'm really looking forward to on their slate that is a Casper knockoff that is called, and I kid you not, Ghoster. That's right, they actually called their Casper knockoff Ghoster. Assuming they actually release with that title and don't get sued into oblivion, I look forward to seeing when that drops. In the meantime, though, we have C.I.Ape, which follows the same template. We got a young kid, and we got a CGI chimpanzee. And C.I.Ape, on the surface, looks like something that would really attract the so bad it's good crowd with that kind of title. It has a good ring to it, like a Sharknado kind of ring to it. So it appeals to not just the family audience, but also those looking for a cheesy movie to make fun of. The problem with C.I.Ape, though, is that it's not a so bad it's good movie, it's just so bad it's bad, and not in the way that you would want it to be. So C.I.Ape stars in exactly the way you'd expect a movie called C.I.Ape to begin, which is namely with a James Bond spoof. It begins with a pre-title sequence where Sam is sent on his latest mission where he has to infiltrate a facility and then sneak around the bad guys and eventually has to beat up all the guards. And that's exactly the kind of movie that you would want to see with this kind of title. You want to sit back and go, ha, that chimp's fighting humans. That's stupid. But you know, it has all the kind of cheesy humour that you would expect. So you've got first-person shots that have some sort of banana meter in the corner, and all the performances from the live-action cast are really broad and cartoonish because they know exactly what movie they've signed up for. They know they're not supposed to take this seriously, and they don't. Right down to the fact that the line that goes into the title sequence is, "Who's that funky monkey?" And of course, we get the Bond riff credit sequence. They're not really doing the sort of Bond girl thing because this is a children's movie, but even so, it's clearly meant to evoke that sort of Maurice Binder sort of styling. And so that is all present and correct. And for at least 20 minutes or so, C.I.Ape is exactly the kind of movie that you would anticipate from just seeing the title. If you didn't know anything about it, it's exactly what it is. So it delivers on what it promises at first, but then they've got you. Because C.I.Ape is a classic example of a bait and switch, where they have front-loaded the movie with all the stuff that you would want to see out of it, and all the stuff that would easily fit into a 2-minute trailer, and then you don't need to watch any more of the movie from that point forward. In fact, the best recommendation I have is that if you want to watch C.I.Ape just watch the first 10 minutes of it. Just go up to the end of the credits and then hit the stop button, because there is nothing else to be gleaned from watching C.I.Ape. But as the movie progresses, you actually get less and less of that kind of thing. And I actually feel like the movie is a very calculated playing of the bad movie demographic, because the filmmakers know that the title does a lot of the work here. They know that people will watch it for that reason alone, so they don't have to put too much effort in, aside from having enough outrageous moments that can be snipped out of context in a trailer. A good example of this is an early sequence where Sam is flying over to the island over shark-infested waters, when suddenly one of the sharks jumps out of the water at him, and that moment clearly feels like it's playing towards the Sharknado crowd. The filmmakers were hoping that people will report on this movie called C.I.Ape and accompany it with a screen grab of that specific shot, so that people will watch it and think it's this some ridiculous, so bad it's good movie. And it just feels very cynical in that regard. But yes, while C.I.Ape is definitely a family movie, I would also argue it's not very good at that either. Look, I'm not asking for very much here. I know exactly what this is. But a movie called C.I.Ape has to deliver on exactly one thing, and I really don't think that C.I.Ape actually delivers on the chimp. Like, there are long stretches of this movie where Sam just completely disappears out of it, and that's the title character. That is your star attraction. If I was a 6-year-old, and this is the target demographic of the movie, I would be watching it for the chimpanzee, and there is a distinct lack of chimpanzee in this ape movie. What are you playing at, filmmakers? I get it, CGI is really expensive, even in the case of something like this where it's not very convincing, but it looks passable enough. But obviously what happened here is the filmmakers put a lot of that CGI material in the first 20 minutes, and then they were like, oh, we've run out of money for the rest of the movie. Because it's like the chimp in this is in some kind of Bruce Willis deal where he's kind of separately filmed from the rest of the cast. It's very funny. There are entire scenes that just happen and then we'll suddenly cut to a random insert shot of Sam listening in on the conversation. So you maybe get one shot of a chimpanzee in an entire scene. In fact, the whole way that this movie deals with Sam as a character is very peculiar, because it feels like the movie hasn't actually committed to the talking chimpanzee bit, because sometimes Sam will talk, but he doesn't talk enough. He doesn't talk like a character. In fact, there are really weird interactions with Sam as a character where I feel like there was more scripted dialogue for Sam, but they never actually recorded it with the voice actor, or they just thought it'd be too expensive to animate it. So there are sequences where characters are talking to Sam, and there are just pauses where I'd assume lines are supposed to be, but it just continues on one solitary held dialogue shot. It's so strange, and then suddenly Sam will talk again. Suddenly he'll just say something random like, I don't know, don't hate the player, hate the game. He literally says that at one point. It's really odd. Sometimes the chimp will just make chimp noises, and then other times he'll speak in full sentences. Commit to the bit, movie! In fact, Sam barely even factors into the plot of this movie. It feels like once he gets on the island, he doesn't actually do anything, and the more active characters, all the way back in Jungle Command, it feels like he could have saved Sam a trip and just done the entire mission from their office. And if I was a kid watching this, imagine yourself as a 6-year-old and you sat down watching C.I.Ape, you would expect action and slapstick. And this movie delivers on neither of those things. And so that's a real shame. And you must be asking yourself now, well, what does it deliver on if it doesn't have ape, action, or slapstick? And the answer is lots and lots of really elongated improvising from live action actors who are clearly just trying to stretch the thin material to feature length. I will say, full credit to Skip Schwink, he's really trying to give something out of nothing. At times he almost reminded me of Hank Azaria in the way that he was just really chewing on the scenery, but it's to absolutely no avail, because scenes go nowhere and just feel tiresome. There are so many would-be comic bits that are just exasperating. There are several monologues where characters just whittle on endlessly about food. I'm not joking. There's at least 3 examples of this. There's an early scene where someone compares crime to milk that's been out of the fridge too long. There's another scene where someone goes on a full-on monologue about how much salt should be in microwave pizza. And there's a running gag about real pistachios in pistachio ice cream. Like, what does all this stuff have to do with anything? Do they literally go, oh, we don't have a scene here, talk about food? There's so much obvious filler material here that it's frankly insulting. There are several scenes of supervillains all sat around a table wearing ridiculously cheap costumes that look like they raided a joke shop, with names like Chrome Dome, Forehead, and Evil Queen, all taking turns to make fun of each other, that you pretty much could have just done in one scene, but instead you got 3 interminable ones that drag on for ages, and each one is less funny than the last. But perhaps what hurts the movie is it doesn't feel like there is anything at stake through a lot of it. Like, I get it, it's not meant to be scary for kids, but it should feel like something is actually happening. There should be some immediacy about what's going on, but Alpha Dog is such an incompetent that his robot dogs barely even function for most of the movie, and his mad scientist, Dr. Devious, the scenes with him are pretty much the 2 actors just trying to out-ham each other. Alpha Dog's got his thing where he starts howling like a dog, and Devious has got his thing where he's really obsessed with guinea pigs. It feels like the movie is really afraid of actually making the characters in any way menacing at all. I get it, it's meant to be a light-hearted movie, but there's gotta be moments where the villains at least feel threatening for at least half a second, maybe? I mean, especially because Alpha Dog's costume, he's dressed like Fearless Leader from Rocky and Bullwinkle. It's pretty imposing. He looks like a would-be fascist. But then the movie does perhaps the most inexplicable thing of all. So, a keen trope of a lot of family fare is that they have these kind of sentimental subplots that deal with issues that affect children's lives. Bondi's subplot in the movie is that her parents are getting a divorce. And yeah, that kind of feels like it doesn't fit with a movie about a spy chimp, but even so, I don't mind having these things in there. They're meant to reassure kids about things that might happen in their everyday lives and normalise them in some way. However, the subplot in this movie about Alpha Dog's daughter and how they're estranged is just absolutely preposterous, especially when she confides to Sam that the reason that Alpha Dog got into the supervillainy business is because he lost his wife to cancer. Like, that is absurd. Like, the combination there of something so serious and the ridiculousness of a guy deciding, yeah, after that, I'm gonna take over the world with my robot dogs and really commit to the canine bit. It's just, it just boggles the mind. It just genuinely floored me. Like, I don't think even a kid would be able to take that seriously. And I don't think it's meant to be funny either. It's so out of place because the character's clearly been conceived as a cartoon villain, and yet we've got this treacly emotional subplot that we're meant to take seriously. Oh yeah, sorry I've been an absentee parent. I've only been trying to take over the world. Like, it's so absolutely inane from a storytelling perspective, and also it feels like the movie is just afraid of actually making the character just cartoonishly evil, especially because that would make sense in this kind of movie. And also, maybe you should have your villain actually interact with the title character. It feels like Alpha Dog and Sam barely even meet over the course of this movie, aside from a couple of very fleeting instances. They're otherwise in two completely different movies from one another. So there's a lot of missed opportunities for comedy, but also the movie just tries to go for an emotional hook that just simply does not land in the slightest. And the finale of this movie is a huge damp squib. You would expect a film like this to end on a big slapsticky, hijinksy set piece, but honestly, it doesn't. The most action you see in C.I.Ape is in that pre-title sequence. That's a lot. The ending of the movie is very talky, the threat is neutralised extremely quickly, and Sam is barely involved in that resolution at all. So it feels like most of it is just a lot of the actors just hamming up on green screens. Even though it's set outside, it's clear that they were filming this during COVID, so you've got groups of actors all never in the same frame as each other, all clearly filmed with different lighting to the background that's behind them. It's embarrassing. Frankly, it's a really weak finish to this kind of movie, especially if you're a kid just hanging around hoping that it will deliver in the end. No, it genuinely doesn't. C.I.Ape just underwhelms its way towards the finish. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, the movie, in its closing credits, actually has a bonus scene where they try to tease a sequel. No, please. So yeah, C.I.Ape is literally so bad, you can't even recommend it for small children to watch, because even they will recognise this for being subpar dreck. In terms of the so bad it's good crowd, just watch the trailer. That has most of the laughs in it, and that was in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And in terms of being family entertainment, well, obviously the parents are going to check out very early on, but I don't think this will entertain kids, because it doesn't have the stuff that they would want out of this. They want the wacky humour and the over-the-top antics, and they want the chimp, and there is very little of the actual ape in the movie. Like, I know that there is obvious budgetary concerns with this sort of thing, but you just can't have the title character essentially disappear out of his own movie. So this is a huge letdown in every department. It's just a total failure. Honestly, if you want to watch a family spy film starring a big ape in the lead, just watch The Secret Agents Club. If you like this review, then you can buy me a banana over at my Ko-fi page, or alternatively, you can't spell Patreon without the word ape, where you can see my reviews early among other perks, including access to my Discord server. But until next time, I'm Matthew Buck, fading out. I managed to not corpse that take.